Our industry is going to be investing over $500 billion over the coming years on technology. And we need to be asking ourselves, how do we get the most for that investment? So how do we do that then? Well, the first step is to admit that nobody really wants a software-defined vehicle. I'm fortunate enough to be able to spend a lot of my time going to events around the world and visiting clients and talking to them. And one of the things that I've noticed over the last 12 months that has worried me is that technology has gone from being a tool that we use to be able to deliver goals to consumers and to our business, to technology becoming the goal itself. And we're seeing that more and more in a lot of the statements from the big car companies, from the big suppliers, around their mission statements, around their visions, around becoming software-defined, connected, autonomous vehicle manufacturers. And that's something that I think we need to think very carefully about as an industry. So today I want to explore, why is this shift happening towards technology becoming the goal rather than an enabler? Why is that a problem? And what's the alternative? So first up, why is this happening? Well, I think there are two factors at play here. One of them is our environment. We are in a hyper-competitive environment that is full of disruption. You can see that all over the place. You can see new players coming in from China. You can see all kinds of new startups emerging. And you can also see a huge amount of other types of disruption happening, whether that be ecosystem, supply chain, regulations, technology, and all of that puts a huge amount of pressure. On top of that, I think the second factor behind putting technology first is our culture as an industry. We are primarily a group of engineers who enjoy technology, who like what technology does for us. We are curious, we want to be able to use technology in new ways. So why is that a problem? Well, it really comes down to what happens when you put technology ahead of consumer needs. And we've seen a number of examples of that where silver bullets emerge within the industry, whether that be connectivity, whether that be software-defined vehicles, whether that be autonomy. And the focus then becomes around, how do we develop these technologies as organizations? And what that creates is a technology-first approach that hasn't sat well with consumers, isn't resonating well with the media, and is starting to get pushback from regulators. And we've seen examples of that all over the place. We see consumers lashing out against concepts like features as a service. We've seen communities getting quite agitated about the rollout of robotaxi services. We've seen regulators starting to step in and become quite prescriptive around not just what types of technology, but even how that technology should be implemented, whether that be the number of buttons on a dashboard. And all of that points to a problem. Our industry is going to be investing over $500 billion over the coming years on technology. And we need to be asking ourselves, how do we get the most for that investment? So how do we do that then? Well, the first step is to admit that nobody really wants a software-defined vehicle. Not many people really want connected vehicles or autonomous vehicles. What they're really asking for is the value that those technologies can deliver to them. They're asking the question, what will it do to improve my mobility experience? And if you put yourself in the shoes of consumers for a minute and ask, what are they trying to get from mobility? The reality is that that has changed a huge amount over the last 5 years. We found out during COVID and the lockdown how easy people were able to rely on less travel, on less mobility. They found new ways to achieve more without having to move from A to B. And that really was a warning flag for the industry around what can happen if consumers learn to rely less on mobility. Because mobility comes at a big cost. Cost in terms of lost lives, cost in terms of pollution, in terms of congestion, wasted time, cost in terms of theft and property loss. And those are all factors that we need to consider when designing the future of mobility. So practically, how do we do that in a way that's more outcome-driven? Well, we need to start by defining what those outcomes are. And we see the future of mobility around the concept of a pyramid of needs. And at the bottom of that pyramid of needs are what we call the 4 S's. Mobility that is safe, secure, sustainable, and seamless. The key now is to rally around those outcomes and make sure that that bottom of the pyramid is satisfied so that consumers feel like they can enjoy mobility. And that really means coming together and defining in much more detail what each one of those 4 S's means in practice. Making sure that we all have a common definition that can come into the meetings that we have, those planning sessions, make sure that in every decision we're taking, we understand what does it mean to be 4S. So practically what that means is we need to rally around those key outcomes. We need outcome-defined vehicles as well as software-defined vehicles. And we need to make sure we understand what those outcomes are. What do we mean by safe, secure, sustainable, and seamless mobility? The definitions of those outcomes will vary by region, it will vary by individual. And we need to make sure that we are talking a common language so that we can design the right type of mobility solutions and products. What we want is for that common language to find its way into every meeting room across the industry so that whatever decisions we're having to make as an industry, we put 4S at the forefront of those decisions. We always think about how 4S will be affected by the decisions that we make. And these outcomes need to work really well together. There is always a trade-off that needs to happen between safety, security, sustainability, and seamlessness. And whilst it's always very tempting to just chase one of those outcomes, and you see a lot of that in social media and at events where there is a clear focus on just one, that will often come at the expense of the others. And if we don't think about all of the outcomes together, then we risk creating a worse mobility experience. So these are connected outcomes, and we need to make sure that they stay connected, that we're all aware of those constraints and those trade-offs that need to be made. So what next? Well, we want to start a discussion with all of you. We want to understand where you've seen examples of technology being put first and what impact that's had on the industry, on your companies. And we want to start exploring how we can put 4S at the center of decision-making within the industry. And that journey of exploration can start right here and right now. And it can start with you, and it can start by you exploring what does mobility mean to you. Think about how you travel today. Think about your vehicle if you own one. Think about what frustrates you the most of traveling from one place to another, what frustrates you about your vehicle that you use. And try to connect those dots between those outcomes that you're looking for and the 4S's. How could that experience be different if your vehicle was more safe, more secure, more sustainable, and more seamless to use? And by connecting those dots, we think we can create a conversation across the industry that's going to help us define what 4S mobility means and what we want to be able to achieve as an industry.